Welcome. Today I am going to be talking about software teaming. And I am going to try to get the first slide on the screen as well. Does that work? Yes, and the next slide is that slide. Perfect. I didn't know I had an animation on this thing. There we go. Okay, yeah. So, no, don't worry, you're in the right room. The thing is that back in the days when Woody Zuhl and his team was starting to experiment with this concept and trying out different things, they came up with the term mob programming, and it was sort of a mock term to them. It was sort of a bit of a joke, but then it stuck around. And ever since then, people have started to try to find a better name for it. And there have been several attempts. But right now, Woody is using software teaming, and that is also the name of his book. So that's what I'm going to be using today. But it felt like people are more familiar with mob programming, so I wanted to put that in the abstract until this new term has made itself into everyone's mind. All right, so let's see. I wanted just to start with a bit of an introduction as to who am I and why am I talking about this topic. And first of all, then, who am I? I started as a software tester. And I found that really exhilarating, trying to be a detective, trying to find bugs, trying to find the root cause of bugs and all of the things. And then I realized that working with quality was so much broader than just testing. And I was an Agile coach for a while, trying to work quality into the teams. And after that, I realized that, hang on, when I started at university, my idea was that someday I would be putting code into production. And I haven't done that yet. I've done test automation, but I haven't actually done code into production. So then I switched career path, and I became a software developer. And so that's what I have been doing for the last 7 years, and the last 6 of those years have been exclusively using software teaming every day on the job. And a little bit about this talk then. First of all, it's a topic that I just can't stop talking about. If you meet me in the hallways here, it's okay to after a while say, Ulrika, can we please talk about something else? Because I just find it so fascinating. There's so much to say. There's so many aspects to it, and I just really love talking about this. But I also wanted to mention that when I submitted this talk for the first time and I started sitting down to write it, I realized that it wouldn't make much sense for me to sit on my own and talk about how amazing it is to work together. So what I did was that I enlisted the help of my colleagues, and a group of us would meet regularly and just talk about what is it that we like with software teaming, what challenges do we see with it, how does it actually work, why does it work? And so all of the things that I'm talking about today are sort of the distilled thoughts of all of us. So this isn't just my opinion, it's our collective opinion. And for some of these people, they've only been in one place where they have done software teaming. For other people, they have been in several other places. So it's a bit of a mix of experiences. But it's also really nice because when you're coming to a conference and you're standing on a stage, there's always this sort of partially imposter syndrome, partially worried that there's going to be someone in the audience who knows more than you do, and they will tell you that you're wrong. But in this case, I feel like I have confidence because I have all of my colleagues behind me. I know that our experiences are real. So I feel very, very confident when I'm standing here right now. Okay, and then I wanted to... Okay, so I need to make sure that one actually goes there. Yeah. I wanted to have a bit of a disclaimer as well, because when I'm talking about this, it is going to sound like I think that this is the absolutely only way that you could do software development, that this is perfect and the very best way. But the thing is that for me it is, with my circumstances, with my personality, and the challenges that we have, this is what I want to do. So it's going to sound a bit like that. But Bear with me on that one. Okay, so what are we covering today then? A bit of an agenda. We need to set some definitions. We're going to talk about what software teaming is. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite benefits. How would you succeed with it? What challenges might you meet? I want to mention a bit about how does this fit with remote work. I want to have a quick mention about how do you handle juniors when you're doing software teaming. And then I wanted to open up for a bit of a discussion, and we'll finish off. So first of all, what is software teaming? So software teaming is a software development approach where the whole team works on the same thing at the same time, in the same space, and at the same computer. Okay, so what does that actually look like? Here's a bit of a drawing of this. You have a big screen so that everyone can see. You have the team gathered around, looking at the screen. You have one person who we call the driver, who is the only one who has a keyboard. And the rest of the people are called navigators and are going to tell the driver what to type. You might also bring in a guest expert if you have a particular topic that you want some help with from an expert opinion. So the idea is that for code to make it into the computer, it has to be discussed by the navigators and gotten into the computer by the hands of the driver. So it's a collective effort to write this code. As you can see, there's a timer on the computer there, and that is also something that some teams use, that you switch around so that the driver only sits a certain period of time, and then you switch places, and everyone gets to sit at the keyboard. I have some pictures of what this would look like in real life. So these are some examples of what it looks like. And I also have a picture of what it looked like for us when we were doing a sort of a hybrid situation. We had one team member who was working from Mexico for a period of time. And so we have this big microphone in the middle so that he can hear us. And we all are wearing headsets so that we can hear him. But we're still doing a remote session, a remote software teaming session. Today, of course, I am fully remote all the time. So my setup looks something like this. I have my screen, I have my cat, and I have my keyboard. And so this is the approach that I recommend if you're working remotely with software teaming. You should have a screen, a cat, and a keyboard. You could do with a puppy or something like that as well. I think that would be okay, but something similar. Okay, so when we're doing software teaming, what does it look like? We are right now a very small team. I'm still going to call it a team, even though we're 2 people. There is a tangent there. If we're 2 people, are we doing pair programming or are we doing software teaming? And I think that we're doing software teaming. You can talk to me in the hallway to find out why I think so. We are full-time remote. And for us, which means that we have one computer as in the office. That is our team computer. And that computer has a remote software on it. So we're using AnyDesk, so we can remote into that computer. So we're connecting from at home using AnyDesk. It could be TeamViewer or something similar, connecting to that one computer. And that's the only place where we're coding or doing other stuff. It's only this one computer. When there was 3 of us, we used to have a timer, but we don't anymore. Because it works fairly well to switching back and forth and taking breaks. But when we were 3, we had a timer. We would do 8 minutes per driver, and then after 2 rounds of that, we would have a break. And what I'm missing the most of not having a timer is that sometimes we overrun. We should have had a break, but we don't take the break because we miss it. That's the one reason I think we should maybe have a timer again. And so what's really interesting about our setup, and also something that I'd recommend, is that we only have one singular online presence for our team. So whenever something is talked about with relation to our systems or our work, we post on Slack or we send emails, we do that from our team account. So whenever someone has a question about our systems, they ask the team account. And this is really great because if you're sick, there's no one harassing you on Slack personally, trying to get you to log into your computer and do some work. They just ask the team account, and whoever is available from the team can answer. So I think that's a really, really, really great approach. The people who are talking to us don't necessarily know who is answering, if it's one person, two people, or which one of us, and that's really cool. I still have a personal account because I might need to talk to my boss or post cat pictures or something like that. But anything that is sort of related to our systems and our work, teamwork, is done from the common account. So to summarize, this is my personal account, cat pictures, and this is our team account for team stuff. Okay, so now that we have looked a bit at what it is and what it looks like, how about we talk a bit about the benefits that you can have with software teaming? And for this purpose, I have selected 3, and it was really difficult because this is not a complete list. But like I said, I could talk all day about this. Let's start with the first one and my absolute favorite, which is organic knowledge sharing all the time. I remember how I've heard in many places, I've heard people who are complaining about code reviews or about not having things documented, or we should get better at transferring this knowledge, or there is only one person who can do this and that person is sick, or oh, that person started the work, I can't continue, I don't know where they left off, all of those things. And I have not heard any of these complaints for the past 6 years, because these are just non-issues for us. There's never a problem that a particular person isn't on site or isn't available. All of the knowledge that we have around our systems is shared equally among us. We are always there for all the decisions and everything, so we know all of those things. And our CTO pointed out that, or former CTO pointed out that this knowledge sharing that is happening all the time is also great from a resilience perspective. He was less worried about personnel turnover, for example, because he knew that the knowledge wasn't sitting in just one person. It was spread across the team. And one aspect of this knowledge sharing I want to bring up in particular, and that is, you might be familiar with this situation where you come across a piece of code that someone else has written, and you sit down and you look at it and you go like, why did they make such a complex solution? I can see a much simpler version of this. I'm just going to refactor it quickly. And then after a little while, you're starting to realize that it wasn't maybe as easy as you thought. There were more aspects to this than you actually realized. And you go, oh, that's why. The thing is that the previous developer had to take into account a lot of things that you weren't aware of when you first looked at it. And those things were maybe things that they had tried but then backed away from. Maybe they tried your solution first, but realized that this wasn't an option in this case. And those things aren't actually recorded anywhere, those going back and forth. And I want to share this quote as well, which I think is so incredibly powerful, because you're not just sharing the knowledge, you're actually sharing the thinking that led up to the knowledge. You are also learning from your colleagues when it comes to their problem-solving tactics and their strategies. How are they thinking when they see this kind of problem? What do they immediately go for as a solution? What do they try? How do they troubleshoot things? All of those things are also being shared, not just what was it that happened. And when you're problem solving, it usually looks something like this, that you have an idea that you try out, and then you run into some obstacles, and then you realize, no, this wasn't the way to solve this. And you try something else. It's not very common that it's actually the first one that was the one that worked. But all of these other dead ends, they don't get recorded anywhere. They're not written down in a pull request. They're not in the documentation. They just happened to you as a developer while you were doing this. But when you are doing software teaming, you are also sharing the knowledge that we tried this way, it didn't work because of this reason. And that is incredibly powerful, I think, because it leads you to be able to make quicker decisions in another situation. It leads you to understand more about what is this problem, really. And sure, you could document this in writing, but I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's not something that we're particularly good at as developers. Another aspect of this is also that not every problem is a programming problem. There are a lot of things that you're doing when you're doing software development, which isn't just writing code. It can be closely related to code. It can be that how do you find things in the Google Cloud Platform UI? I need a team to help me with that because I find that user interface so unintuitive that it's really hard to know where to click and where not to click. It can be how do you read the logs? What do you typically search for? Other things that are not typically just writing code and that you might not share with your team members in another way. And there is also how to talk to your users, how to communicate with other people in other departments. Those are also things which are related to how can you solve your users' problems, but which are not related to coding and which are not written anywhere, like the culture of those things. So organic knowledge sharing all the time is my absolute favorite benefit. There is no need to plan for the knowledge sharing. There is no need to make a decision if this is something that should be shared or not. Is this something we should talk about in the group? It just happened. There's no need to try and guess if you should tell someone something. You had a discovery, you had a dead end which you felt was interesting. Should you talk to other people about that or not? You don't have to make a decision, it just happens. All right, so that is my one favorite benefit. What else then? Well, I find that we develop much clearer solutions when we're doing software teaming. For one, it is a one-piece flow because the entire team is taking on one task. This means that the task has to be important enough for the entire team to feel that is something that they should do. This will probably mean that a couple of things are not going to get selected because this has to require the attention of all of it and the entire team. And I feel like sometimes when I'm programming, I want to, especially for my hobby things, I feel like I want to add like bells and whistles to everything. I get inspired and I'm just like, oh, I want to solve this problem, but I could also do this and this and this. Those kind of things, my team stops me because you have to convince the others that it's a good enough thing, this bells and whistles. Are they good enough to actually make it into the final production code? Are they really that important, or is it just because you had a whim and you wanted to do it? You're also getting a clearer solution because you have to get a common understanding of what problem is it that you're actually trying to solve. It's not one person's interpretation of what the problem is. It has to be an interpretation that everyone shares, that everyone understands. So you might spend a lot of time talking about it beforehand. It might be that, I know when people look at us from the outside, I remember when we were in the office doing this and people were looking from the outside, they were always thinking that, but you just sit around and chat all day. And we did, because we spent a lot of time talking things through. And then when we finally hit the keyboard and had reached consensus on what to do, it was really quick. So the ratio of designing, talking about the solution, architecture, all of those things, that was something we spent a lot of time on. And then the coding, it was fairly quick. And you're also trying to think of, is this really worth the team's time? So is it something that you really need to solve with software? Can we think of other ways of doing this instead? Another aspect of getting a more clear solution is that you are bringing different perspectives in at the same point in time. So it's possible to get a bit of a more holistic view on the problem. It's also a nice setting to bring in this expert or this user into your software teaming setting and get their opinions right away. So more perspective and more experiences. But also, it's sometimes a bit more about the code that you don't write than the code that you do write. Being able to solve more of the right things than solving a lot of things, I think, is a strength. I don't think that we necessarily need more software in the world. I think we might need more of the right software in the world. So that's also an aspect of a clearer solution. But that's very opinionated as well. I want to mention quality as one of our benefits with software teaming. I find that the quality becomes a bit more consistent, partially because we're helping each other keep up good habits. We might have said in a retrospective that we should remember to run the tests more often. And then we can remind ourselves, we actually said this, and it helps. I'm really bad at having discipline on my own, but I really like the help that the team gives me in this situation. And you also notice that even though your afternoon energy level is dipping and you feel like, I don't really feel like doing the last couple of steps, there might be someone else who is more of an afternoon person, who had a snack before and who's able to pull the team through to the end. Being able to ride on those energy level differences is really nice. It does get the backside of that, or the drawback of that is that when everyone is down, it's really, the mood is terrible. But that doesn't happen too often. But then again, when everyone is up, it's really great. Another aspect of quality which benefits from software teaming is how you're raising the lowest level to the highest level. How, if I'm going to solve something and I'm pretty terrible at CSS, it's going to get my level of solving. But if we're doing it in a software teaming setting, it's always going to get the best skill level of the person who is in the team. And I think that's such a great way of just raising the quality level without having to think about it too much. And also I'm learning those new CSS stuff from the people who are better at than I am. Did I miss to give you the slide? I'm so sorry. So this is a graph which shows you how the lowest level can be raised, because the team output is the highest one available. All right, so what about another aspect, which I think is interesting, how when you're sitting on your own, some things which have, like time sinks that you have, a slow build, or in this case an export which is slow, it means that you feel like, oh, okay, so I'm going to have to wait for this. I'm just going to take a little bit of a break. And in this example, I found like, oh, this person, well, I'm just going to scroll Instagram for a while. And then after a while you realize, oh, right, yeah, I was just waiting for the build. That one is done. Okay, well, now it's almost the end of the day. I'm going to have to go cross-country skiing. I'm trying to make it a bit Norwegian here, sorry. I guess that's what you do every afternoon, right? Yeah, perfect. I'm very envious, that's why. But when you're in the same situation and you're doing software teaming, and you're just sitting there and waiting for something, it gets kind of awkward. Because you're just staring at the screen and like, okay, yeah, this is taking quite some time. And you're much more interested in fixing it because it becomes so obvious. Everyone had this time sink before, but you were just sitting by yourself, so you don't notice how bad it actually is. So you're much more likely to actually solve the root cause. And there are other kind of root cause problems which are more likely to solve when you're using software teaming. All right, enough about the benefits. I wanted to touch upon, this sounds great. How do you do to succeed? And the first one of these, which is I think the most important one of them, is curiosity. I think that people who thrive in a software teaming setting are actually more curious about other people than they really want to be right themselves. Because if your colleague comes up with a solution which you intuitively feels isn't the correct one, if your gut response is to just try to shut them down as quickly as possible and win that argument, it's not going to work in this kind of situation where you're trying to learn from each other and you're trying to move forward as a team. Instead, I would recommend that you ask them about their solution more in depth and try to understand why is it that they felt like this was the best solution in this case. And then you might learn something. So the people who enjoy this, I think, are people who are a bit more curious. They're more interested in learning something new than being right. Another aspect, or another success factor, I feel, is having some shared values, some common ground. And in particular with this, it's really difficult. The thing that people struggle with often when they want to try software teaming is that not everyone wants to try it. So that's the comment that people always give me. And I don't have a solution for that because I left to go somewhere where I could do software teaming because I felt like I wanted to work in this way and I wouldn't compromise on that. But I feel like if you're going to try to make this a success, and at the same time you have to try to convince people who don't want to be there, that's not going to work. So I think that in that case you should just find the ones who want to. Maybe you can find some other allies, maybe not in your team, but maybe in another team, who want to try this, and try to work with them instead of trying to convince other people who are not that interested. Because if they're not even curious about this, I don't see that they have the personality type to actually manage to succeed with it. And it's going to be difficult as it is. And if you're going to try to work with people who are striving in another direction, it's going to be even harder. And so what you might want to do is, if you're in a bigger team, maybe half of your team wants to do this and not the other half, then maybe split the work somehow so that you can do it with the people who want to, and then leave the others to do work the way that they want to. They're going to be fine. Don't worry about them. Just try to find an environment where you can work the way that you want to work. That was the wrong way. There we go. So patience is going to be super important if you're starting with this in particular, but throughout the journey as well. You're going to try to do something new, and that might feel uncomfortable at times. You're going to have to learn new habits and new ways of communicating with your colleagues. It might be frustrating because suddenly you have to explain out loud what you're thinking about software, and you might not be used to that. So you need patience for this, and it's really easy to end up in the old habits, and think that, oh, I could solve this so much faster if I did it on my own. In particular, maybe if your team comes across a bug and you realize you know the solution immediately, but now you have to explain to the others why this even is a bug to begin with, and that might take some time just before you can start solving the thing. So I know that there are going to be situations where you're going to feel that it will be quicker to do it on your own. But in the end, you don't want to be the person who has to solve the bug each time, because you want to go on vacation as well. It is not going to be beneficial in the long run to just be the one person all the time. So I would encourage you to have kindness towards each other, and also to assume good intent in the others, because a conflict is so much easier if you think that this person isn't out to get you. They have the heart in the right place. You're just not understanding each other right now. That is so much easier to move forward from if you're assuming good intent. And conflicts are going to become visible. These might be conflicts that you already had in a team, but they only showed in some situations. Maybe it would flare up in a meeting, but then when the meeting was over, you left the meeting and you went to your desk and you could forget about it. But in this case, the meeting is just ongoing all the time. So you need to solve it properly. So yeah, patience and kindness towards each other. And I need to say that it's important to have retrospectives. This is where you do the continuous improvements. This is where you're growing when you're getting better at software teaming, and you should always do retrospectives anyway, but yeah, it's going to help here as well. Let's see where we are. All right, some challenges. The first one, or the first mention that I should do, is that, as I said before, the conflicts that you have, which bubble up and then they disappear, when you're doing software teaming and when you encounter a challenge, you're going to be stuck in it until you have solved it. Because you can't just go to your desk and leave the room or flip the table. But the thing is that it's good, because each of these resolved challenge you won't have to face again, and you will have grown and you will have learned something new. So it is a good thing. It's just that it can get a bit annoying when you're in the middle of it, or frustrating maybe. So the first challenge that we brought up was, there are some situations where you're kind of clueless. You encounter a problem and you don't really know which path to take. And that's typically a situation where a conflict bubbles up, because people can have very opinionated ideas about how do we start this thing. One example can be if you're starting a new technology. We started using Blazor, and we didn't know. We hadn't used Blazor before, for example, in our team. So we were a bit frustrated with each other because we were trying to read a tutorial, and someone was like, "You're scrolling too fast, I haven't finished reading." And we were in that kind of a situation where it wasn't good. So what we found out, and what we've done a couple of times, is in those situations where you have different ideas about how to go about this. For example, learning something new. Do a time box and split up for a while. Because someone maybe wants to do the tutorial, someone wants to watch a video, someone wants to take a course somewhere. So just say, like, let's go study Blazor. We'll meet again tomorrow afternoon. And hopefully people have learned things and can bring them to the table, and then you can work from there. So that's my recommendation for those situations where you're don't really know exactly how to approach it. I wanted to mention a bit of a team size. I find that if you are more than 5, it's going to be challenging. So 3 to 5 is a good size. What's interesting in our group discussions was that we discovered that some people had done this in a physical space and a remote space, and everyone sort of agreed on 3 to 5. It didn't matter if it was in a physical or in a remote setting. And I find that it's kind of, if you're thinking about how long do you get, if you're using a timer, for example, how long until your turn at the keyboard? If you're dividing an hour by 5, it's going to take a long time before it's your turn, so you get a bit unfocused. Another challenge we have faced is when we're trying to explain things to each other, and you're just trying to do it with words, and you're not getting anywhere. And this is also a bit related to you don't really know what to do. And this is also a situation where we felt like it was a good idea to let everyone step aside for a bit, have a think, draw a sketch, and then everyone comes back and shows their sketches to each other. We've used it, for example, when we were thinking about what should the UI look for a user in this situation. And we were trying to be like, it could be a Dropbox and a drop-down, and then they could select that. It was really difficult to just talk about it. So we went to our separate places, we made a sketch, and then we came back, and we picked some from one person, and we picked from the other, and then we merged those ideas together into something good. one of the situations which can be the most frustrating when you're doing software teaming is when you're trying to troubleshoot something. And the first thing that makes it a problem is that people don't read the error messages. My old colleague Dan, when we asked him, like, Dan, you were such a smart and clever and intelligent person, you've been doing software development for so long. When can you tell if someone is a senior developer or not? And he said, a senior developer reads the error messages. And we're like, no, there has to be something else, that can't be the thing. But if you think about this from now on, are people actually reading the error messages, or are they going, oh, there's an exception, I know what it is, and then they go wildly in another direction? Because that's my experience when I started thinking about it. People just have an idea of what the problem is. They don't read the actual error message. And when you're doing that in a software teaming setting, and people are going, we should do this, we should do that, and they can't agree, and someone is like, but it says, yeah. It's just people are flailing around wildly, and it doesn't get any good. You get a lot of conflicts. Which path should you try first? Add some stress into this because it's a production issue and it's chaos. So my suggestion here is to have a bit of a strategy. Just start by reading the message, have a strategy on how to go about it. But in this case, you should not split up. You should stay together because this is a learning situation for everyone. So this is when you employ your patience, where you try to have a strategy, where you try to be structured about it, and try different things and make sure that everyone sort of gets their voices heard. But stay together and learn from each other, even though you feel like this is uncomfortable. I just want to try stuff. I'm stressed. I want to try stuff. Stick together. One thing that happens a lot when you're starting with this is that you end up in situations where people will say, this work is not suitable for software teaming. And that is typically when it is uncomfortable. You feel like you're not making progress and those kind of things. And usually there's not a good reason. It's just that you want to get out of this uncomfortable situation as fast as possible. And I can I can see that. It's not comfortable right now. You want to get out. It's a natural reaction. And if you're in an experienced team, you might stop and realize what's actually going on here, and that there is a problem. There is something that is bugging this team that you have to solve. But it's usually not that it's something that's not suitable for teaming. I have yet to find something that is not suitable for teaming. So try to figure out what is the actual root cause here and how can you actually solve that. Okay, so what about remoting then? In my experience, it works just as well. There's some pros and some cons. I found that it was really great when we were doing, when the pandemic hit and we were sort of forced remote and we were sitting together, because I didn't feel like I had a loss of connection to anyone. We're just talking to each other about 6 hours a day anyway, and we have time to talk about our pets or make jokes, or we talk about books and stuff like that. And we also have time to work. And we're just talking to each other. We're getting to know each other very well. And we onboarded a person who has left the company since then, but who is still a friend of mine. That's how well you can get to know each other when you're doing software teaming remotely. I would recommend using Miro for all of your whiteboarding needs. I think that it might be even better than a whiteboard. Make sure that you have some fun from time to time, maybe play Pictionary online or something like that. So that's things you can do to make it work remote. But in general, I really like it. What about juniors then? Because on one side, bringing in for a junior coming into software teaming setting is an amazing opportunity. you're sitting there in the middle of it and you hear these experienced developers talk about pros and cons, and should we use this approach? No, that has those difficulties, and should we use that approach? It can be exhilarating and you can learn so many things. But there is also a point in letting the juniors have their independence and gaining confidence through that. So here's a situation where I think that it's good to give them a couple of tasks to solve on their own, so that they get to feel that they have learned all of these things, that they get to feel that they are comfortable by doing this on their own. Because there might come a time when they might be the only one available on the team. Everyone else is on vacation or something like that. And they still need to get that confidence and to try out things. So my suggestion here would be to set aside a couple of hours for them a week or daily when they can work on their own, and then bring them in the rest of the time. I think that's good. Okay, so I wanted to then open up for a bit of a discussion. And because up to this point we talked about the benefits of software teaming, we talked about explore the topic a bit more. And one question comes to mind, because I've been working in this way for over half a decade. And for me, this is normal and what I do every day. And when we were having these group discussions about software teaming, we were always trying to talk about the other way. But what is the other way? And when I think about it, to me, it now sounds a bit strange. So you're taking, you're doing user stories and you're splitting them up, and other people go in different places. And it's a bit weird to me. But I also need to have a word for it, because I need to talk about software teaming or whatever that other thing is. So I wanted to explore that for a bit. And so the first thing I did was try to look at the characteristics of these different ways of working. And in this case, I said that one of them was the traditional way because of the lack of a better word. And so what I see with this way of working is that you split the work up among individuals. The work runs in parallel, so things can happen at the same time. It can be resource sensitive, because it might be that there's one person who knows something in particular, or someone is sick and they can continue their work or something like that. You will see that there are regular syncs in between individuals. So there might be stand-up meetings, you might have code reviews or pull requests or planning sessions or knowledge sharing sessions or things like that. And then on the other side, then we have software teaming. And in this case, everyone works on the same thing. One aspect of it is that if the team is blocked, then everyone is blocked. You're waiting for access rights to something, well, then everyone is waiting. We can also see that the knowledge sharing is continuous. So the names that I came up with then, when trying to name this and when I looked at these characteristics, I feel like what I put as traditional, to me that would be individual-centered teamwork. And software teaming would be work-centered teamwork. And that's because in the individual-centered teamwork, you take the work and then you give it to the individuals, you split it up. And the individuals are important in this scenario. In the other case, the individuals are swarming around the work, and the work is the thing that is important in that scenario. So this is how I'm going to talk about the other way from now on. I'm going to talk about individual-centered teamwork, and I'm going to talk about work-centered teamwork. Change the default a bit here. When I'm looking at the risks of individual-centered teamwork, I'm seeing a long list of things. And this isn't the full list of things. And some of these I find really interesting that people are willing to go along with. Varied in quality because of people's potential energy levels. All of the handovers that are being done, all of the misunderstandings and double work and inadequate knowledge transfer, all of those things. And also my favorites, the wasted time. All of that time that is spent in all of the synchronization meetings, in knowledge transfer sessions, when you're doing pull requests, all of that time is wasted. But not only that, you're also going to spend time on trying to make these activities better because they are never really good. Like, no one likes the stand-ups, right? But yet people spend a lot of time, a lot of retrospectives, trying to make the stand-ups better. And you're always talking about the knowledge transfer, how bad your knowledge transfer is, how should we have more sessions about it, and then no one shows up and no one has anything to present. So you're not only wasting time, you're sort of wasting time doing the waste. And this sort of bugs me, because people often ask, is software teaming really efficient? I don't know, it seems a bit rich to me. Have you actually managed to prove that individual-centered teamwork is efficient? Like, why are we contrasting these kind of things? And I'm getting a bit tired of trying to defend one approach which has these amazing benefits towards another which hasn't even proven its worth in itself. Because it's not like we were delivering like bug-free software on time all the time, and then software teaming came along and sort of ruined that. And I think it's important to realize that we're in the business of knowledge work. The difficult thing that we're doing is trying to use our brains to solve complex problems. And if we can use a lot of brains together to do that, we're going to get better results. And that's sort of been proven time and time again. We're not looking to write code as fast as possible, especially not with AI, which can do that part for us. We're trying to solve these new problems all the time. So I think we should optimize our ways of working towards the flow of knowledge, rather than are individuals busy or not. And so that's why I would like us to talk about software teaming as normal teamwork. And so then you can say to me, but Ulrika, during the disclaimer, you said that this wasn't the one way of working, the more optimal way of working. And I'm not a hypocrite. I still don't think that it's the one way of working. But I think that the default should be software teaming. I think there are times and places for the individual-centered teamwork, but I don't think that we should go, let's all work individual-centered and then sometimes do software teaming. I think we should do software teaming and then sometimes pick a problem which is appropriate for an individual to sit with on their own. I think that the risks of not sharing knowledge, of not finding consensus on designs, not using the lowest level of quality are so much worse than we might be inefficient. So I think that it's time to change that default. All right, enough of the rant. Let's try to summarize this and get some final thoughts together. First of all, I really like this topic. As I said many times, I want to talk about it more. Please approach me in the hallway if you have any thoughts or questions or anything. You need to realize that conference speakers want people to talk to them. They just love their topics. So even if someone has a book out or podcast or whatnot, they just really want to talk to you. So approach them whenever you want to. And not maybe whenever you want. Okay. Yes. All right. All right, so what have we said? The summary of the things. I'm going to go backwards here. First, we said that for juniors, this is amazing, but they might need some time to build confidence on their own as well. For remoting, I think this works just as well. I think it works even better than doing individual-centered teamwork remote because of the time you spend talking to each other and learning from each other. We looked at some challenges. We saw some situations where you might get a benefit from sitting on your own and thinking about a problem and then coming back to the group with your thoughts and ideas and sketches and whatnot. I mentioned several times that it might get uncomfortable, but also I hope that I convince you that it's going to be worth it because you're going to learn from it, you're going to grow from it, and that particular challenge won't be a problem once you resolved it. We looked at some success factors. We talked about how important it is to be curious about other people, about other technologies and other solutions. We talked about how shared values is a good thing because it's easier to have a common ground to stand on when you want to do something a bit new. And how patience is really, really important. Patience with each other and patience with yourself and patience with computers. And then we have just once again my main 3 benefits of software teaming. Organic knowledge sharing all the time, I think, has to be repeated over and over again because it's so great that this is something that is just happening without having to plan for it, without having to make any effort to do it. I think that the clearer and more precise solutions is an excellent benefit as well. And I really like how it gives us a more consistent, even and higher quality throughout. So I hope that you're willing to try this. I've been talking mostly about this sort of a 100% all the time. We're sort of merging into one entity. No one knows who is even typing anymore, kind of software teaming. But you don't have to do that. You can do it for certain tasks, for example. I think the benefits are much greater if you're doing it all the time because there's a lot of synchronization that you don't have to do. But if you want to try it, I think that the same success factors and challenges will apply in a smaller setting than in the full-time setting. And I want to say once more that even though I recommend sometimes that you split up, it's only when you want to move forward as a unit. It's not that you should go and code on your own. Then you're losing some benefits. Okay, so I wanted to end with this. From my perspective, software teaming is solving some of the difficult problems of software engineering just by bypassing them, which is amazing. You're sharing the decision-making process as well as the results. You're just communicating, giving feedback, sharing knowledge all the time without having to make an effort to do it. And when you're working together in this way, it feels like you're doing real teamwork. And to remind you again, like our profession is knowledge-based. We should optimize for the flow of knowledge. And so that was it for me. Thank you so much for your time.